talk. And basically what we're talking about here is we're having real conversations and, about centered around literacy. And the reason why I call it real reading talk is because in the Black community, we're used to saying, we want to get serious about something. We want somebody to be for real about something, be straight up. We'll say, real talk, tell me what's on your mind, no sugarcoating, none of that, no holding back. So that's why I said, okay, well, let's call this real reading talk, because this is what the conversation is about. I wanted to address, the issues of why, in particular, all children in general, but in particular, why our Black children as well as Latino children are not doing well at all when it comes to reading. And why also our Black and Latino children, a lot of them do not want to read. They say they hate reading. They say reading is boring. When I go into the schools and I substitute teach part-time, and I make it a habit to ask the children, I say, do you like to read? Now, usually when I'm subbing for like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, they usually like, oh yeah, I like to read, because, how little kids are, they like, anything you ask, oh yeah, sure. But when they start getting like third and fourth grade, fifth grade, and even especially in middle school and high school, the kids are like, I hate reading. Reading is boring, and I'm like, wow, and I try to tell them though, I say, well, look, I think what it is that you haven't found the book for you yet. That's what it is. So I try to gear their minds into thinking about that. But this is a real big issue. And I said, man, I'm like, we really need to talk about this. Now, even though you have people who are talking about one of the issues in terms of diversity in books, you'll hear a lot about that, we need cultural, diversity and all those types of things. And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely a big part of it for sure. But I want to get down to like the real nitty gritty in terms of why that attitude towards reading, in particular with our Black children, why they have that, especially when you got 16 to 17% of our children who are entering in the fourth grade, Black children and Latino children who are reading proficient. So 16 to 17% in the fourth grade are reading proficient. Here in Cuyahoga County, which is our county in Cleveland, you have 66% of residents are functionally illiterate. So what does that mean? That means they basically are getting by with reading. So they can barely read like a bus schedule. They can barely read a restaurant menu or even do an application. So all these different issues need to be addressed. And then even in some communities in Cleveland, you have high rates, at least of like 80 to 90% of the children are falling behind, are really low, Black children, when it comes to reading. So this is why I said, okay, we're going to have a real reading talk podcast, but also see with our real reading talk, it's not just talk here. See, we're about solutions. We're about action, so we don't just talk. That's the first part. Then we're going to talk about what we're going to do about it. Exactly. All right. So I forgot to tell everybody, my name is Miss Sasha Beckette-Abdullah, by the way. I'm sorry. I like got going or whatever. And so now that's the first part. So now I want to introduce everybody to this brother here. Now, I first saw Mr. Louie T. McClain II when I was watching I guess it was a podcast, it was on YouTube. Brother Andre Hatchett was interviewing him. He was interviewing Mr. Louie T. McClain II, as well as another brother. And I'm all listening to the, watching the video, and I said, wow, man, I said, this brother is like dope. I mean, I was just feeling, I love the fact how he, came up with these books, wanted to talk about, Booker T. Washington, and especially the book about Dr. Frances McBarnett. I had never heard of her. And I said, wow, man, this is like so amazing. I'm like, oh, wow. So when I was listening to the interview and everything, I said, wow, I said, I would definitely love to connect with this brother. So I reached out to connect with him on Facebook. Then he accepted my request. So I was like, yay, I was all pumped. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So then when I saw the books that, that he wrote, he's an author, as well as he owns his own publishing company, Melanin Origins, y'all. That's right. And so I said, oh yeah. I said, it's on. I said, I will be purchasing books. And sure enough, I did. Our organization, ABC Read, which is a nonprofit that we have, we started here in Cleveland. And so we said, yeah, we're going to be purchasing books from this brother from here on out. So, and also he's the father of 2 gorgeous children. They look just like him, y'all, okay? I mean, just awesome. So, without further ado, I am here to introduce Mr. Louie T. McClain II, y'all.
Hey, thank you.
So, how are you, brother? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you for having me on this podcast, the very first podcast. It means a lot. I love the topic, and I love, the subject matter that we're going to discuss here. But a little bit about myself. I'm from Arlington, Texas, born and raised in Arlington, Texas. Let's see. I actually went to school in Florida. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I worked in juvenile justice for over 7 years in Pensacola, Florida, in Dallas, Texas, and in Fort Worth, Texas. Let's see. Currently, I work for American Airlines, and I have melaninorigins.com. Melaninorigins.com. We write children's books about African-American pioneers, all right, such as Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells. There she is, Ida B. right there.
Damn, come on.
We also wrote a book about Dr. Francis. She's a pioneer in treating patients with sickle cell. Sickle cell disproportionately affects people of African descent. So we also give 25% of all proceeds from that book to sickle cell charities. These people were born with that. They didn't do anything to deserve it, so we want to do what we can to help them out. But melaninorigins.com. Next year, let me tell you about next year really quick.
Cool, no, talk.
Major. All right. Okay. So we have Tuskegee Airmen coming in February. We have Madam. Oh yeah.
Okay. I'll talk. All right, go ahead.
We have Madam C.J. Walker coming in March. All right. We have W.B. Du Bois. We have we have Booker T. Washington's wife. We have Benjamin Banneker, and we might we want to have Marcus Garvey. Okay, we want to have Marcus Garvey, but I'll stop there for that because.
No, go ahead. No, I'm expressive like that. Excuse me. You keep talking. I'm just like, go ahead.
All right. Here's the thing. Okay. If you say that you want to look up, you want to get some Black history books for your kids, and you go to, let's say, Barnes and Noble or some bookstore. All right. So there's a high chance that you're going to find that you're going to find a book that has slavery and civil rights plastered all across the cover. All right. Now we write books for children that are, pre-birth up until about 1st, 2nd grade. All right. I think that a kid that's 3 or 4 years old should be able to know about Booker T. Washington. I think that they should be able to know about their historical leaders without the first idea of being Black being associated with a negative connotation. All right. So we make a conscious effort as we're writing to 4 and 5-year-old children to talk about our historical leaders, show them people who look like them, who did outstanding things in history, and not.
Mic, please. Excuse me, I'm sorry, brother. I can't.
Okay. Is this better?
A little better. I don't know, because you were doing real good, and it was like the last couple minutes. It sounded like you kind of start fading out a little bit.
All right, let me just make sure everything is good here.
Okay.
Okay, how's it now?
Okay, it's a little stronger. Yeah.
It's a little stronger.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, I lost where where I was, but we write to an audience just so they be introduced to who their leaders are, right? So that they can associate that with greatness. They can look at it and say, oh, okay, I can do these things. I can be studious. I have thoughts in my mind. I can write them down and I can expound on them. I can brick by brick about Booker T. Washington. It teaches about how he and the students built the Tuskegee Institute with their bare hands. Oh, I can take one step at a time. I can achieve things, and I can do great things in life. And so those are the things that we want to introduce to our children. And then later on, as they start to learn about the harsh realities that they face, at least they would already had an introduction, and so they're already going on the right path. You said something earlier about, and that's exactly the vision for the company, is about how our children are getting lost, you know, in the school system. So just like you said, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, kids are all excited. They have teachers. Everything is colorful, bright, and bubbly. You know, things are great. But as they start getting fourth grade, fifth grade, middle school, high school, you know, things start going a different way. You start finding kids dropping out. And I think two reasons. And I mainly can speak on my own experience.
Okay.
Right? And the thought behind Melanin Origins and everything that I do, that I try to do, is the thought of do unto others as you would like done unto yourself. Okay.
Golden rule.
In the email or text that we had earlier, you asked about my past, about reading, if I've always liked this, and to be honest, I chose to read my first book when I was 20 or 21 years old. Like, I read my first book on purpose. On purpose. Wow. All right. On purpose. I was actually heading to a family reunion. I sat next to an African-American woman on the plane, and she had a book by Terry Wood, and it was called Dutch. And I started speaking with her, asking her about the book, and she said, well, read the back cover. And if you like it, you know, you can start reading. And so I read the back cover. I did like it, but, you know, I was, you know, trying to be modest, I guess. I tried to give her the book back. She's like, no. Go ahead, read it. And so when I started reading that book, I couldn't put it down. I was like, whoa, what's happening? I was like, how is it that somebody put, like, I'm actually reading and I'm having a better time than if I was watching a movie or a sitcom or reality TV? Like, how is that happening right now? My mind was blown. And so I say all of that to say is that, you know, we do things that we find value in. So from that time, like, I got all of the Dutches, and then that's when I started, you know, being interested in finding value in, like, in other subjects like leadership or something like that. You know? And so I never knew that I could read a book and be entertained. You know, I always thought that I had to do something else. And so that's what's happening with our kids. I can't say that all parents have the experience that I had before I began reading, so that they don't see the value in to, like, put that to their kids, you know, on a continuous basis. Like, I think we all know the value of education, but not just how entertaining and the things that we can get out of reading a book and how that can drastically change our lives. So I would say the values that's in the child, and also, you know, from the parent to greater encourage that. But then also, when it comes to the schools, culturally responsive pedagogy or culturally responsive teaching is what's needed so that we can reach children of color. All right. Right. So what's culturally responsive pedagogy? You know, it's a teaching that takes into people's cultural aspects and brings it to the forefront to make it more relative to the child. Okay, so when you're in high school and you're reading about Homer and the Odyssey, and Come on. What is happening here? Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get it. Right? Like, I don't understand. To a person who's just not used to opening a book to, like, find entertainment and to find that kind of sustenance, you're really like just going through the pages and trying to figure out why is it that I'm reading this whenever there's so much other material out there that can reach me that I could be tested on and I can do well in, and so culturally responsive pedagogy is what's needed, and it's not what's focused on by the educational system. And I know I'm talking a lot, but
no, keep it. Come on.
But that's why we created Melanin Origins, so that we can provide learning materials for our children to where they can look at it. And another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was saying whenever you go to like a bookstore for a Black history, you know, so first you're going to see slavery plastered all across the cover. All right. Now, next, you're going to open the book, and then you're going to see, okay, Jimmy was a slave picking cotton in the field. His mother was sold. Okay, you're going to see all that stuff. All right. Then 50% of the time you can look up who the author is. You'll see that it's a Caucasian, which, that's not necessarily always a problem. But at the same time, who better to tell our story than someone who has lived the experience and who's more closer to it. And people tend to tell stories from a certain perspective, which is why they don't understand that all they do is talk about slavery. Towards the end of the story, there's some overcoming. There's something good comes out of it. But if a Caucasian child picks up a book, subconsciously, blacks were inferior. I wonder why that was. Black child opens a book. Oh, I was inferior. I wonder what's going on. Oh,
right.
Oh my. Well, not all my teachers are white, but as I get into corporate America and looking around at the power structures, you look in the inner city, you tend to ask yourself, so you have this thread that's brought up and sprung up from when you're a child to see yourself as African American as being inferior, and I think it's a part of the plan. And so we want to switch that around. We want to add great, valuable learning materials that are up to par, and we want to teach our kids to be strong, and we don't teach racism, we don't teach Black supremacy. We don't teach none of that stuff, right? We just want to promote a healthy psyche so that our kids, just as people can learn about Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Edison and all that stuff, they can learn about Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, Madam C.J. Walker. They can see, you turn on the radio and all you hear is negative, derogatory. They're talking about raping people on the radio. That's crazy. You turn on the TV. You turn on the TV. You see some of what society claims as the most beautiful women. Dressing with this expensive stuff, this expensive hair, fighting and calling each other, the B word and H word and all this crazy stuff and like that. Oh, so this is how Black people act.
Mm.
Life is all about. This is where our youths are. No. We want to show them that, look, at the same time that might be going on, look, there's some outstanding, exceptional individuals that you need to know about, that you can aspire to be like. And if you can do that, you can achieve anything that you want to do in the world, just like how they did.
Right.
That's melaninorigins.com.
That's what's up. My cat, he keep trying to come in the interview. Oh my goodness, brother, right there. I got a lot to unpack right there, because you was just dropping nuggets. I just had my little bucket right there, just collecting them. All right. Just all of that information you said. I co-sign on all of it, everything. Well, I want to go back to a couple of things. Let me go back real quick. Now, I know you said that you were a juvenile corrections officer, correct? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So now tell me, when was it? And you also said that when you were 21, that's when you read your first book. So that right there, I was just like, wow. I'm like, because it's interesting. It's funny because you have a lot of people who think, like I was listening, for example, to this one podcast, and it's called, I think, the Read Aloud Revival. And she had a guest on there, and basically the man was just talking about how you have some kids who don't get into reading or even learn how to read until like they're like 7, 8, even 9, 10 years old, even later than that. You know, and a lot of times in this particular podcast, this is a Caucasian woman. She, you know, has this podcast or whatever. And so, and I just thought that it's just like kind of interesting to where, you know, those types of things are not really, you know, really talked about a lot. How like, you know, how you have some kids, you know, some people who grow up and they don't really start reading for real, you know what I'm saying, until later on in life. You know what I'm saying? And for you to even say that you actually read your first book at 21 was just like, wow. So now I want to ask you, when did you start to come up with the idea of Melanin Origins and wanting to become an author? When did that trigger? Like I said, I know you were the corrections officer in juvenile. My assumption, I'm thinking that because you were working around children who you see, you know, who lacked a lot. That's my assumption, but I can't assume because you're right here. So I need to ask you, when was it? You know what I'm saying? When did that trigger go off in you to say, okay, you know what? I'm about to start writing some books for our babies. I'm about to start making sure that our babies are educated.
Okay. Thank you for that question. All right.
Yes.
So I'll take it back a little bit more. I used to,
Okay.
I've always wanted to do something that's going to help people out. And, you know, not always just wanted to, but I've always been putting into practice certain things. When I volunteered with the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice before I got hired there. And I noticed that, you know, the judge would mandate a kid to go to school, that they would mandate them to pass their classes. Like, this is a court order for them to have like good grades and to have perfect attendance. If you don't have this, then of course, you know, you violate your probation, you go back to jail on some crazy stuff. And so I was like, why, if that's the case, those two things, how about you make tutoring a court ordered sanction too? You know, you want them to do well, you want them to find value in it. How about you, mandate them, you know, and provide the resources for this to happen, for them to receive a better education, you know? And so I started that campaign, and it was successful in some courtrooms there. When I started working in juvenile in Texas, when I moved back home to Texas, I created a nonprofit organization to help people with criminal backgrounds get connected to jobs. It's called Humane Resources. And then also created a scholarship program for kids in Liberia to get, you know, to go to college. And so I say that to say, I've always been trying to do something. All right. But given the series of events, you know, Barack Obama became president, which was outstanding, great. I don't care what anybody has to say. You know, I love that. Don't care. You know what I mean? He's a symbol, and you can be better or greater than him. So aspire to do that and don't talk down. You know, Barack Obama, and then that's whenever we started getting a whole bunch of, you know, like racism, which was more in the closet. You know, now it just came all the way out. I was like, what's happening? What's going on? 2012, Trayvon Martin. And like, oh man, boom, we get hit. You know, I went to a Christian college. Okay, damn, I'm going all around the world, but
I'm sorry, you bringing it back. I see what you're doing. You're doing the circle. You bringing it back. I hear you. Go ahead.
I went to a Christian college, and you know, the people, you know, a lot of them were farmers. They wore Confederate flags. You know, they were pro-Republican. Like, I even spoke with the dean way back when and asked about, you know, having Black history, and it was like, well, you know, we don't have white history, you know, month, and you know, blase. But you know, whenever Trayvon Martin happened, and then, you know, Mike Brown, and you know, everyone else, you know, rest in peace, not trying to be disrespectful, you know, my classmates, you know, supposed to be my friends, my so-called brothers and sisters in Christ, you know, they're putting Planet of the Apes pictures on a Facebook talking about Ferguson They're calling Trayvon Martin a thug. They're like defending all things white and not even trying to understand what's happening with us. So it was like a huge rift that just happened. And then that led to the emergence of people like Dr. Boyce Watkins, Dr. Umar Johnson, and just like, like these guys who we could find refuge in, strong Black personalities to say, look, to have some sense, like, man, look, this is what's going on financially. This is what's going on historically. And so I learned so much about creating your own business for sustainability, and not to rely on, the corporate structure, which is not created for you anyway. And then that's from Dr. Boyce, and then from Dr. Umar, learning more about my ancestors, and that's when I learned that Booker T. Washington, made the bricks himself, and he was so determined to provide a better environment for these children, for students, that he built. Like, I can't even think about building my own house with Habitat for Humanity. You know what I mean? Like, I can't even think about that. This gentleman built a whole school and like institute with his bare hands, and so that I was like, okay, you can do whatever it is that you want to do in life. You know what I mean? Like, the things that we're facing here with racism is like a drop in the bucket to what they were doing, facing way back then. So if they're facing that then, and they're able to achieve this much, then what are we even doing here? Our children need to know about this, because, and then I'll go back to what they're getting on the media, which is all this negative stuff. And so that's whenever the thought came to me. And thank you about the compliment on my kids. I have kids, and they're, at the time they were like 1 and 2 or something like that. And so I started learning about that Booker T, and then he had an opposer, Du Bois. I'm like, okay. Just like I said, back then you're facing all this stuff, but you have a Black opposer. What's going on? And so, learning about the different schools of thoughts, learning about Marcus Garvey, learning about Ida B. Wells, and the things that she and her friends face, and the reasons why. And so my mind was blown, and I said, I can't wait until my kids are old enough so that I can be able to talk with them about these things. And I'll say, hey, look, well, this is what the boys believe. This is what Booker T. Washington believed. What do you think about that? Okay, now flip it around. You're gonna, what do you think about the other one? Let's talk about this. Building critical. Like, I couldn't wait for that opportunity to be able to do that. And I said, why can't I do it now? Right. Why can't I do it now? MelaninOrigins.com. And so that's why, the thought wasn't to be just like an author. Like, I already, like, at that point, I said, I'm going to look up, I'm going to see if this information is out there. If it's not out there, I'm bringing it to the world. And it wasn't out there. It's not out there. Okay. And so that's, that's the story.
Well, right there, I appreciate that. That right there is, I love that story. That's awesome. I mean, you said a couple of key things. One of the things that you said was that how you saw there was a need in our community to help our children. Like you said, in terms of starting a nonprofit, in terms of talking about the tutoring program to offer to the kids, who were getting in trouble. So right there that's the first point in terms of, when we want to have, just like I said in the beginning, this is real reading talk, but we're also having some real reading solutions. And right there, you said, hey, look, there's a problem. We just can't, just be punitive to our children. The whole point is to help them. It's the restorative justice, as they say, right? Yeah. So that point right there, I love that aspect. And so you said, you know what? Here's the thought. I see a need. So now I'm going to do something about it. So that's the point number one. And then point number two, how I like what you said, was that when you started to look up information in terms of Booker T. Washington and Ida B. Wells, and you're saying, okay, let me go find out about these people, and and W.E.B. Du Bois, right? And even though, like you said, yeah, they were on opposite sides of the coin, but the thing is that they both had something of value to offer, even though they had different approaches just like how people talk about with, Malcolm X, may peace be upon him, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., peace be upon all our brothers and sisters who have passed and basically who have done something, who have left a legacy, even though they were, they had different approaches in terms of how to fight this racism and white supremacy. They both had an approach, and they said, look, they both had a common goal. They knew it needed to be done with. So that's the key right there. And like you said, you reminded me of the quote that Toni Morrison said. She said, if there is a book that you have not read, then you go write it. If there's a book out there that you have not read, that you don't see out there that you want to read, then you go write it. I know I'm jacking it up, the quote, but in a nutshell, that's what she said, so she made it clear, like, hey, look, we have that ability to be able to, make changes, and that's the key. That's what I'm hearing from you, with, our Real Reading Talk conversation. It's about identifying the problem truthfully and saying, this is what we need. And just like, I want to go back to one of the things you talked about in terms of value. And that is just so true. When you said that when a person values, something, then that's when they are going to do more of it. Just like you said with reading, you had to, it became a value to you, when you were 21 years old. And I'm just like, wow.
Late.
And it's interesting though, Brother Louie, I can relate to you because, see, I didn't grow up in a household reading. I didn't grow up in a household where I had, books all around me, and my mom and dad, they, read me a little bedtime story. And I didn't have none of that. I grew up watching TV.
Right,
I was the TV head. They called me the walking TV guide. They would come to me and say, what time does this show come on? I'm like, oh, it come on this channel, this time. I'm a little kid. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
I
wow.
was like, man, I was a comedy head. I was in the Three's Company, you know what I'm saying? So all them little shows, okay? So I knew the TV shows, but I did not grow up reading at all. So it's like, so that's something I always try to tell that story to young people. I'm like, look, I can relate to you. I can't, I'm not gonna, what I'm saying, act like, oh yeah, I grew up like this and that, and you should be up. And I said, no, I can relate. We come from the same, quilt or whatever, what I'm saying? We come from the same spot, you know what I mean? So I'm like, look, all you have to do though is that, number one, what I believe is one of the things a person has to do is find that thing, that niche or something that they really like. That's one of the girls, she had asked me at a high school that I was subbing at. She was like, can I ask you, how do I, get into reading? What is this something that I need to do? I said, well, first I said, identify something that you really love. What do you like to do? If you really like baking, then guess what? There are plenty of books on baking. If you like, engineering, trucks, do you like math? Whatever it is, whatever you're drawn to, there's a book about it. I mean, it's just that simple. And I think a lot of times people think there's this magic bullet, there's this, super thing that you have to do. And it's like, no, really what it is that you just have to start off with the things that you love, the things that you like to do, find books on that. And also surround yourself with books constantly. And that's one of the things, like I said with myself, I was not surrounded by books. With the TV in our household, that was the centralized location of our family time. It wasn't like it was a reading time. And actually, ironically, what's tripped out though, Brother Louie, my youngest sister, she actually was a reader when we were younger. We'll be all like going in the living room, going to watch TV. And then, for a little minute, she'll stick around for a little bit. Then after that, she'll kind of retreat back to her bedroom, and she was reading her books. And so wow. I'm not for sure, where that came from, or whatever, because it wasn't like she saw my dad, and my stepmom, like reading books or whatever, all like that, so I don't know where that came from, but I guess she had what they call that intrinsic motivation. She already had it inside of her already right. To where she had developed a desire to read. So, and that's the thing. And that's one of the things that we want to help develop in our children as well as adults, to be able to go to, like you talked about in terms of entertainment. We understand that everybody wants, to go on their little, their phones, their tablets, or watch TV. We get that. Everybody has their little form of entertainment. They want to relax. but we want our reading, we want the books to be at least, you know what I'm saying, the one or first two choices, you know, that our children go to. You know what I'm saying? We want that to be up there high on the value ladder, you know.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so right there, I definitely, I'm like, when you said that, I was just like, I'm like, okay, you know what, this brother is on it for real. And then also speaking a little, I wanted you to go a little bit more in depth too about how you talked about developing that healthy psyche, you know, the reason why you came up with these books like about Ida B. Wells and Booker T and Dr. Francis McBurnett. You know, could you tell us a little bit more about how important that is for our children to have that healthy psyche?
Yes, I think that it's very important. And as I said, most of the things I speak about are going to be based off of personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, so my parents are from Liberia, West Africa, you know, so it's different. Well, I know back in my time, it was my time in the grade school. I know it was different being seen as an African as opposed to an African American. So it's like I never, you know, it's hard finding that identity. You know, it's hard finding that identity. And if you're a child, 5, 6 years old, and you're just entering into you know, school, you know, kindergarten, first grade, we believe that the information that you see and receive about people who look like you know, should be positive. It shouldn't always be associated with a negative connotation, because that can have effects on your psychological health going down the path. I mean, when you look at a guy like, well, no, I won't even get into to judging people, but so whenever we thought about Booker T. Washington, we just said, okay, what are some of his greatest characteristics? What are some of his greatest accomplishments? And how can we put that together in a book and make it friendly for kids? Okay. And so we seen that he was a leader. We said, okay, that's what children, that's a good value for kids. He was a good public speaker. We seen that he was heavy on self-determination. All right. When it comes to Ida B. Wells, you know, first Ida B. Wells, I was never taught about Ida B. Wells in school. I learned about her like after I was 25 years old. I learned about Marcus Garvey when I was 25 years old. And so pretty much what I'm trying to get at is that we knew that there are people that's not being talked about in the education system, people who do great things, outstanding things. And we know that they have some very great characteristics that can be imparted to children so that they can stand and be strong. And when I refer to psychological health, I'm mainly thinking about a kid where they are, let's say a first grader, you know, who's green and blind to the ills of the world, you know, leading up to a person, you know, like myself, you know, who's 31 years old, who has experienced a lot of negativity from the world, right? Now looking back at it, I can see, you know, more about, you know, the systemic issues from my teachers. I can see more of the systemic issues from the police and just from the systems that I've participated in, you know. And so we want children, you know, to be we want to best prepare them, you know, for this journey of life. Okay, we don't want them. I mean, how fair is it for you to only see, you know, white excellence? You know, for you to be Black, Hispanic. How fair is it for you to only see white excellence and then only see, you know, the story about the Native Americans and what happened to them? You know, to see your so-called president on the TV being disrespectful to Hispanics and African Americans. You know, to see all this stuff, like how fair is it, you know, for a child, you know, a 5-year-old kid, you know, like it's just not right. And so for me, having experienced what I've experienced, like Melanin Origins, the idea came to me about two years ago. 2 years ago, and then I just learned about Booker T. Washington and Du Bois and Garvey like a couple years before that. Like how more powerful and dynamic could I have been if I got this stuff when I was 5, 6 years old?
Come on.
You know, I walked around blind and lost for the longest time, trying to walk this fine line so that, you know, I don't, you know, not even about, you know, not going to jail or this and that, but like, like an unworthy participant for like a very, very long time. And our children are going through that. That's why they find value in this detrimental stuff. You know what I mean? Like, how can you find value in talking about killing somebody? That's all that we, you know what I mean? We're not focused on like rapping the ABCs or like rapping anything of great value. It's all about things that are detrimental to our community. Why is that? You know? And so we, like, I'm not a psychologist. I didn't study all of that, but I know that if we can give children positive messages and that they can see themselves in those messages and they can see people who actually did exist, who look just like them, we know that we can better equip them, right, to face the things that we face today, to conquer it, to champion it, you know, not even just overcome, you know what I mean, but to subdue the competition, you know. And that's not any racial competition. That's just the enemy. Anybody who's out there who wants to oppose the value of life and equality and equity, you know, that's you know, that's when I speak to psychological health, I speak to that. I speak to that. Like, we've all been through so many negative experiences, whether you know, faced whether we want to just say prejudice in general, or we want to say bigotry or racism or whichever other form of prejudice, you know. And so right now in America, the main form of prejudice that African American people face is racism, from individual acts and from systemic acts. And we we need to show kids that people are out here changing realities. These right here change realities for millions to come after them. And you too, you know, whether you see it as infiltration, you too can create your own system and make a difference. You too can work within the system and make it. However you choose to want to do that, you can do a great job and you can live a great, happy life by if you focus on these things and not things that are detrimental to the community. So
right there, brother. I mean, that's like mic drop right there, y'all. I mean, that's what's up. I mean, that's just awesome right there. I mean, you really summed it up in a nutshell. You know, a lot of the things, a lot of different conversations, you know, that I have with my own children and when I'm talking to other people in terms of getting our kids, and like I said, as well as adults, into reading, you know, because you have some adults too. I mean, not just some, you have a lot, unfortunately, especially, like I said, in the Black community, Hispanic communities, where you have our people who are not reading. And when you ask them, you say, okay, you know, what book, you know, have you read lately? Or, you know, tell me about a book that you have read or whatever. It's like crickets. You know, it's like, you know, people are like, okay, you know, I haven't really read a book, you know what I'm saying, in a while, and or, you know, I don't be reading all like that. You know, people just be, you know, flat out like, look, and it's like, we have to change that culture. And again, I'm not trying to come off like I'm on some high and mighty reading horse and like, oh yes, you know, I'm just well read. Right. No, I'm not coming off like that, because this show, you know, this podcast is for myself as well. I want us to help each other. I want us all to be in that mindset to where we're like, you know what, we need to be reading more, especially when because I tell our kids, just like I love how you mentioned about, you don't want our children to open up these books and then they look and they say, oh, wow, I come from slavery. Oh, wow, that's my history. Whippings and beatings and torture. Really? Where's the empowerment comes from? Oh, no, but see, this is what we're going to do here. See, we're going to start off telling you about the libraries in Timbuktu. Okay.
Yeah, right.
We're going to start telling you about, people like Mansa Musa, Askia Muhammad, Queen Hatshepsut. We want our children to be empowered, like you said, Queen Amina, so they can be inspired, so they can say, oh, wow, I come from that. Really? Right. And again, we know that Africa was not a utopia and everybody just got along and it was just jewels everywhere and everybody was just, we know that they had conflict, they had people, had warring tribes, all of that type of stuff. But the point is that, if we are able to, connect to the continent and see like, oh, okay, our people did value education. They value literacy. Timbuktu, that was the library where all different people all over the world came to learn from the feet of the scholars there. They came to those libraries where those libraries housed thousands and thousands of books. And so these are the things that our children need to know and need to understand. So I'm glad that you talked about that. And I'm glad that you, have made these books. Like I said, I didn't know anything about Dr. Frances McBarnett at all. And I was like, wow. And even with Ida B. Wells, I had learned about her. I can't remember when. It probably was when I was in college, because I really didn't start getting to read. I think my first book that I really, really read, that I really got into was, I remember reading Of Mice and Men. I had to read that in high school. So the books that I had to read in high school, those are the books that I read. You know what I'm saying? So Of Mice and Men, that was like a book that I really got into. But then the book that I really connected to and really loved, and I remember, was the autobiography of Malcolm X. Now that book right there, that book resonated with me. And I was like, wow, so that is one of the books that helped me with, in terms of, number one, trying to read more, and number two, being connected to my African history, and wanting to do more research, so that right there, what you're saying is awesome, awesome, awesome. Now I wanted to, because I know we're coming, close to the end. So what I wanted to do, I wanted you to tell us, 2, maybe 3, you can have your top 3, if you can think of 3 solutions or 2 or 3 that we can do to help our children get into reading, wanting to read more.
Okay. 2 or 3 solutions.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm glad to hear what a few things that you just said, because you also confirmed a few things based off of the foundation of the company. You yourself just learned about Dr. Francis and a little bit more about Ida B. Wells. I'm pretty sure that you, once you've seen the book and you read a little bit about it, you're like, okay, that's interesting. You went back and you found more information about it. And that's the whole that's the purpose, is to write it for the kids, market it to the parents read to the kids, and they learn like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Oh, okay. And then now they go back and then they find more information. And so now it's a whole cycle that is being created. So I would encourage families to make reading a priority, and to make it a fun priority, and not just like before the night is over, I'm going to read this book to you before you go to sleep, which is good, so if you can do that alone, that'll be good. But also maybe a weekly or bi-weekly or once a month family night where I had a good friend growing up where his family would play Scrabble on Friday afternoons, or just like I said, I can't wait till my kids are old enough so we can talk about things. have these debates, you know, where we can, you know, have a fun topic, you know, that stems back to that. Like we're actually in the process of creating a debate curriculum that doesn't come off as educational. You know, start off with like a topic that's like on the surface, but it stems back to these other things. So like find ways to like make it fun on a consistent basis, whether it's once a week or once a month. So I'd say definitely make reading a priority. I would say we could limit the time that you know, kids are left alone with the TV. You know, I say that, but then also I'd also say this is the third thing, okay?
No,
Also, I'd say just in your own daily life, you know, make excellence a priority. You know, make excellence a priority. You know, have your kids see you reading. Have your kids see you in a positions, being respectful, shaking hands, networking, being in position as a leader. You know, do those things. You know, because they're you can't just tell them to read. You know what I mean? They need to see that behavior being modeled, and then they'll be more prone to follow in that. And the last thing I'll say is this, because I was thinking about it, and then you said the word. I was like, okay, good. So I got to expound on it. And the word is conflict. Okay. The word is conflict. Conflict is not always necessarily a bad thing. Conflict is a good thing. As a matter of fact, in The Art of War, which this is a book, I only got to the first chapter. All right. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I know many people have heard of this book called The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
All right. The very first chapter is about conflict, and it says that for there to be an emergence of a great leader, or for you to get to the next step in anything in life, must be conflict, right? Like there must be a struggle. You know, one person or thought or idea concept wants to go this way, the other one wants to go that way, and so you're at a crossroads, and you okay, what do we do? You know, if there's a third world country out there and the leader is a tyrant, you know, the people want to revolt, you know, they are experiencing conflict. And so now they're like, okay, what to be done? And so in your own personal life, you know, if there's a question that you don't know how to answer, guess what? You can find that information in a book. You know what I mean? You can find that in a book. Like you can just go to the bookstore, speak with someone there. You can go to the library, speak with someone there. You can get on Google. You know, you can find information by reading, and this information that you find can drastically change your life. And so, you know, we don't want you to think about it like as it's just something that's you know, a chore or something that's hard, because when you find something that is interesting, you know, you're going to find pleasure. You're going to enjoy doing that. You just don't know. Some people just don't know that they could, you know, actually find that in a book. You know what I mean? And if you can get your children to be just as excited about this, then they can soar to greater heights than even you, and even me, and even President Obama. You know what I mean? So conflict. If there's something inside you that's like, no, I just can't pick up a book, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Well, what are you going to do about it?
Mic drop. Mic drop, brother Louie. Y'all heard it, right? Y'all heard it. He dropped again. Let me just, you know, do a little recap real quick. It's real quick. He talked about the real reading talk. He said what? He said our children are not valuing reading. He also talked about the cultural responsiveness that needs to take place in the schools. Okay, so those are the things that he identified, and also the healthiness and the psyche that we need to have in our children. Okay, so these are the things what prompted him to go ahead and start to become an author and write these books about these prominent Black leaders like Ida B. Wells, Booker T. Washington, and Dr. Francis McBurnett, and starting his very own publishing company, Melanin Origins, y'all, all right? So that was the first thing. Then I said, okay, so what are solutions? We had a real reading talk, now we need real reading solutions. He dropped them for y'all, okay? He said, number one, making reading a priority, okay? He talked about that. Making it fun, okay? Not like a chore, all right? He also talked about having a family time once a week, once every 2 weeks, to where you're having a game like Scrabble, you know, one of those games to where you're building words, which is centered around literacy, and you're having fun. He also talked about limiting that time in front of those tablets, those computers, the television, the phones, okay? And our kids should be seeing us do it. So we shouldn't say, you know, go sit down and read a book, and then we like this. We can't do that. You know, it can't be do as I say, not as I do. You know, I understand that language, all right? That's real talk. You know, Black people, we understand that. Go sit down, because I said so. You know, don't do that, because I said so. It's like, you know, but they doing it, you know. No disrespect to parents, love y'all. Y'all know what's up. And then he talked about conflict. I like that. I like how he did that. Was slick. You know what I'm saying? How he was saying, hey, look, you know, like he made reference to the book, Art of War, which I got to get, by the way. You know, I've been here. That book is always being referenced, you know, and I'm like, okay, you reminded me. Thank you, Brother Louie. You know, I appreciate that. You know, but he talked about the conflict and how conflict, that brings about change. You know, in conflict, you know, a lot of times we look at it, you know, as a bad thing, like, oh my God, there's a conflict, there's some type of confrontation, there's an issue. It's like, no, it's all about the way you handle it. Just like Brother Louie talked about. You know, you handle that conflict like your person feeling like, man, I don't want to read that, or I don't feel like doing that. You know what I'm saying? Well, you know what? We have conflicts with ourselves, right? And sometimes when we know we got to make changes, we got to get out of our comfort zones. You know, and so and that's what he was talking about, getting out that comfort zone. Don't sit up there and say, you know, oh, well, you know, I don't feel like doing this, I ain't gonna do it. No, that's the time for real, that you need to do it. When you don't want to, you know, when you don't feel like it, you know. So he dropped nuggets, and I hope, and I have to remind my listeners, y'all, hey, when you listen to my podcast, Real Reading Talk, please have your notebook and your pen, pencil handy, all right? Because I'm going to be having guests on here who are going to be dropping knowledge. And I want you all to walk away with that knowledge. Because you know how it is when we're listening to stuff and we get into it, we're like, oh man, that's, yeah. Then we walk away and then we like forget the majority of the stuff. I know, at least I do. You know, and I'm getting older. I have, and then plus I got 7 kids. Okay, so I got that mama brain. You know, so I got an excuse. No, I'm just teasing, but yeah. So, like I said, you know, I'm just like so pleased again. You know, I appreciate you big time. I appreciate you, Brother Louie. You know, for coming on my podcast. You were my first guest. I am like I was just so excited when you accepted, you know, my request, you know, and I definitely appreciate you. And I want you, number one, I would like for you to tell everybody, give everybody your website. Also, the different books, you know, that you have, and tell everybody where they can get your books. And also let us know what book are you reading currently. And you have the last word on that, bro.
Okay. Well, so first I'll say thank you so much. I'm honored to be a part of this podcast. I'm honored to be your friend. You know, it's very inspiring to see all that you do online, putting out good information. You know, it's, you know, when you go live, you do videos, you know, the tutoring, like everything that you do for the community. Like it's like to think that I just thought. The idea of this company came to my mind, and now I'm aligned with people who are doing the great things that I want to do for my kids. That's like very inspiring. So thank you for role modeling and being, you know, a great inspiration to so many people, you know, to me. You know,
thank you.
Thank you. But it's melaninorigins.com. So melaninorigins.com. If you prefer Amazon, you can just go to Amazon and in the search box, you can just type in Melanin Origins and then our books will come up. Booker T. So we have Brick by Brick, which is a snippet of the life of Booker T. Washington. We have Power in, which is a snippet of the life of Ida B. Wells. We have Breaking the Sickle. Similar, like it's a play on words for breaking the cycle of disease, which is a snippet of the life of Dr. Yvette Faye Francis McBarnett. And we have my ABCs. Oh, yeah, I'll show you. So this is my ABCs. Best set. Look at that. It's beautiful, beautiful.
Awesome. And I'm getting that soon. That's one of the books I'm getting, right?
Yep, that is. It is. And this is
what's up.
Brick by Brick. Notice, okay, you see this guy right here in the front. That's Booker T. Washington. But either way,
awesome.
So melaninorigins.com. melaninorigins.com. If you have an idea for a book, we will publish your book as well. So melaninorigins.com. And that's, and then what book am I reading now? Right now, because I'm creating all these different curriculums and so on and so forth, I've been focusing my time on audiobooks and podcasts. And so the last audiobook that I listened to was The Compound Effect, which is a great book.
The Compound Effect, you said? The Compound Effect? The
Compound Effect, yes.
Okay.
All right. So, and pretty much what that's saying is, we have routines, small things that we do, those small things build up over time. They could build up, they could be good or they could be bad,
Right.
If you want to make a change in your life, you're not going to see that, just drastically happen like the very next day, but as you take those steps and move forward and just continue to do these small things with time, then gradually you'll see that, wow, I am now the person that I've been trying to be. Like I am being successful. I am successful, so, Compound Effect. So that's a very, very good book. And I listen to Tony Robbins and a guy named Greg E. Hill with Minority Trailblazers every morning as well.
Love it. I am so, I love it. I appreciate you so much. And I just want to just say this one last little tidbit. I'm glad he mentioned about audiobooks, because if you don't have time to sit down and read a book, you can listen to a book on audio. So I am so glad. Thank you, Brother Louie, for letting our audience know that. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Once again, I appreciate you being a guest on my podcast, Real Reading Talk. And I hope in the future you will come back and tell us again about some new things that you are doing, because, brother, you are always creating and doing new things, and you are always empowering our communities. And we appreciate you big time for that. And so, yes, you are very, very welcome. And I'm not going to keep you any longer. I know you're ready to go get your grub on. So, but go ahead, and I'm going to let you go. And again, thank you once again, my brother, for coming on Real Reading Talk. And I am your host, Ms. Sasha Beckette-Abdullah, and our guest today was Brother Louie T. McClain II. And don't forget to go to Melanin Origins, y'all. MelaninOrigins.com. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Louie. Have a beautiful day.
You too.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Are you there?
Yep.
All right, good. Wait, let me get back to it. I don't even know how to. There it is. Okay, good. Yeah, that was great.